Public Television in Buffalo.
I can remember sitting out here in the 10th row of this theater when I was about 7 years old. My family brought me down to a show at Shays, and from that day on, I've loved this instrument.
In other news today, NASA lost radio contact with the Magellan spacecraft for the second time in 5 days. Engineers heard a brief signal from it this afternoon, raising hope that contact could be restored. The Magellan is orbiting Venus. Its mission is to take pictures of the planet so it can be mapped. The first pictures came in yesterday. They showed a landscape blanketed with craters and lava flows, as well as ridges and valleys. In South Africa, 69 more people were killed in violence between rival black tribes. That happened overnight in 2 black townships near Johannesburg. Police moved in after dawn. The death toll from the fighting during the past 10 days is up to 508.
Once again, today's developments in the Middle East crisis. President Bush activated military reservists to bolster U.S. forces in the Persian Gulf. Mr. Bush said the U.S. does not need additional UN approval to enforce the blockade against Iraq. Another Air Force carrier task force arrived in the area, bringing the U.S. Armada to more than 30 ships. Iraq claimed 2 unidentified aircraft penetrated its airspace from the direction of Saudi Arabia. The State Department rejected Iraq's order to close the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait by Friday. Jordan said it was closing its borders to refugees from Kuwait and Iraq. And the president of Turkey told the NewsHour tonight that the region is closer to war than ever. Good night, Jim.
Good night, Robin. We'll see you tomorrow night with, among other things, a conversation with defense expert Edward Luttbach. I'm Jim Lara. Thank you and good night.
Funding for the NewsHour has been provided by AT&T. AT&T connects the world. From equipment to networking, from computers to communications, AT&T, the right choice. And by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, a catalyst for change. And by PepsiCo. And made possible by the financial support of viewers like you and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Schools, public libraries, other organizations, and home viewers may purchase NewsHour video cassettes by calling toll-free 800-424-7963. This is PBS. Channel 17, WNED-TV, Buffalo.
Just wonderful to see these old Nat King Cole programs, 30.
Because I wasn't really thinking about it, I wasn't pushing it out quite so much. I think that's important. If one can let it all go, if one can be relaxed on stage, then you've really learned how to do it, I think. Something I'm still struggling for. One of my main reasons for doing it was I was getting very bored with the sort of distinguished older actor coming on and doing his bits of Shakespeare or, you know, reading from a lectern or whatever. So I made it very much a play, and my particular show has 4 sets in it. I do 10-second quick costume changes, I sing, I dance, I play 12 characters. I actually kill myself in the course of an evening because I think you have a responsibility. If you're going to make it a piece of theater, you have a responsibility to your audience to give 150% more than you would if you were just in a play with a lot of other people. Performing 12 characters isn't so difficult. That's not the problem. Because I rehearsed it, you know, I've rehearsed it. It's like somebody asked Ethel Merman, you know, whether she was nervous on an opening night, and she said, well, I know my lines, you know. She said, why should I be? I know my lines. That's not quite how I am, but I understand that. You know, if you've rehearsed something, you shouldn't have any problem if you know what you're going to do. The secret of acting, according to Laurence Olivier, was to know what you're going to do to go on and do it. It's a secret of acting. It's as simple as that. And I know what I'm going to do in this, so that's no problem. But the actual keeping it going and keeping the bubble, it's like a ping pong ball on air, keeping that up is what can be difficult and what you have to constantly keep going. And also vocally, it can be very tiring. But it's fun. I must say it is fun. And that's important to know. It's not, I mean, it's not all grueling. I don't want audiences to think that I'm killing myself, which I kind of am, but I don't want them to see that I am.
You're watching member-supported WNED, Channel 17, Buffalo.
Cold winds are blowing through plans by the Salvation Army to expand. Some of its Allentown neighbors are chilled by the agency's decision to purchase the travel motel next door. Coordinator for the Salvation Army, Major James Schatzberger, says they will use the motel to house fire victims and provide daycare.
Immediately, we're going to try to work with the Red Cross. Currently, they use that facility for their emergency disaster victims. If someone's burned out of a house, they'll put them up there for the number of days required to get other housing. So we're hoping to work together with the Red Cross and provide that continuing service. We're also going to look into a little longer-term program of daycare. And we're working currently with our architect and with advisors to see if we might turn the first floor of that facility into a nice daycare center.
It is unusual for the Army to work with another agency to provide services. But the Red Cross will soon lose the two motels it now uses to house fire victims.
The Red Cross has been using the townhouse and the travel motel, or the travel lodge, for years. And the townhouse, which is right across the street, is going to be taken over by the big medical complex plans and will be closing very soon. And the travel lodge was scheduled for sale prior to knowledge of that. And these are the two units the Red Cross uses, so without them, and there are no other facilities available easily in this area, they would be without a facility to do this kind of work.
And the Army says the demand for daycare in the area is large.
Frankly, our research over the last 6, 8, maybe 9 months has shown that the demand is great. We see that Buffalo General's daycare center is not adequate to the need. We've talked to the officials at Bryan Stratton, and they have a numerous number of students who are older, who have children who need daycare in order to go to school. And we've checked the stats throughout the city, and there is certainly a justifiable need for a daycare center.
But the Army's plans have met with stiff resistance from some of its Allentown neighbors. Neighbors concerned that the motel would be used to house the homeless.
We thought they were going to expand their establishment that they have on Military Road for homeless men, and we were worried that they were going to be bringing more homeless men, predominantly drug addicts and alcoholics, into our area.
Our concern with the Salvation Army is they're taking over a 64-unit motel. 64 units are potentially available to homeless people, to unsupervised people, and to problem people such as alcoholics, drug addicts, and people along those lines. We have a lot of alcoholic establishment and drug addict establishments here in Allentown. We have probably the highest concentration of social services in any one area in this whole part of the state. Now, we're not that concerned with what we've got. We're that concerned with what we may get.
We talked about everything, but we did not ever talk about drug and alcohol. That's handled in our Military Road facility, which will never be a part of this facility. It's totally independent, and there's no need to bring any of that clientele here. So that's absolutely ludicrous. Secondly, we have an emergency shelter already. It's running fairly well. There are times when it's maxed out, but there are also times when it's pretty empty. Frankly, we don't need another shelter.
But some Allentown residents are still not satisfied. Hardy says the neighborhood has more than its fair share of social service agencies.
The Salvation Army is a national organization. Why within the 25 blocks of Allentown? I mean, if they want to buy a motel, how about the Lord Amherst out in Snyder? I mean, that's a great place. How about the Williamsville Inn? How about the Orchard Downs in Orchard Park? They'll come back and say, well, these places are too expensive.
It's advantageous because it's adjacent. It has 50 parking spaces. Parking in this area is incredibly valuable. We have 60-some employees. We don't have parking for all of them. We have program needs. We don't have parking for the program needs. Frankly, we would have been happy if that had been 100 parking spots over there rather than 50 parking spots in a building.
Despite the Salvation Army's repeated assurances and Common Council's approval of the plans, neighbors are still complaining. Gomez says many of Allentown's social service agencies are not good neighbors.
It's kind of like X agency feeds a person, pushes them out the door, lets someone else in to eat. Pays no attention to what this first person is doing. Okay, this first person, I don't want to mention any specific agency, but we've had people dealing drugs. We've had people urinating, defecating, vomiting on our porches, in our hallways, in our backyards, leaving their empty wine bottles, beer bottles, whatever, all kinds of litter. I think that our big concern is how this is affecting our children.
What we have tried to do with the residents of the neighborhood is come to some compromise so that they would be assured that we're not going to put in the kind of objectionable programs that we've been accused of trying to institute. Unfortunately, someone, a detractor obviously, started the word that we were going to have drug and alcohol programs here, and homeless neighborhood was worried about that. We have never had any intention of doing that, but you can't control rumors. You can only deal with the facts.
Schatzberger hopes time will melt away his neighbors' concerns. The Salvation Army expects to complete the purchase of the motel this spring.
This is member-supported WNED, Channel 17 Buffalo, serving Western New York and Southern Ontario.